Welcome to the channel, guys. In today's video, we're going to be going over some of the highlights of a month-long trip to Portugal. Part of the family was able to stay the full month, while others came and went throughout the trip. We still had a few days that overlapped where we all got to hang out together. We stayed in the small town of Budens, which was about a 4-minute drive to the beach. We tried all the chocolate milk that the country had to offer. The place that we stayed was on a golf course. However, no one in the family really plays golf, so we didn't take advantage of that. But we did enjoy the pool that was at the top of the complex where you had a nice view of the city. We spent the majority of the trip in the Algarve area, which is the bottom part of Portugal, where there's a lot of beautiful waters and rock formations. Driving down the coast, you're going to notice a lot of bigger cities. Most of those cities are going to have boat tours. One of the boat tours that we booked did get canceled because the waters were too rough, so that's something you may have to watch out for. The first boat tour we did was the more popular option where you got to visit this massive cave. I may be saying this completely wrong, but Benegal Cave is one of the bigger attractions in Portugal. We spent most of the trip in Portugal, however, we did do a little bit of traveling and went up to Spain for a few days. We spent a few days in Spain, but all on day trips at different times. I've never seen Star Wars, but this right here was part of a set for one of the Star Wars movies. This video is just the highlights, so we hop around quite a bit, but I will have more details about the places we visit in the description below if you wanted to check that out. The food on this trip was absolutely amazing. I'm not a big fan of seafood, but if you are, about half the restaurants here are seafood related. In Portugal, we spent a lot of our time at the beach. We also visited this castle a few different times. Outside of the castle, you can see a path that goes all the way to the water. Clay saw this, so he had to test it out. You can see him climbing here, and he makes a jump and makes it to the bottom. I saw that elevation gain and decided to stay at the top and film. When Clay got back to the top, we went inside the castle. You do have to pay to get in, but it was relatively cheap. My favorite part of the castle was being able to walk the walls and seeing all the cannons and how they had those set up. They also had quite a few different spots along the wall if you wanted to take a picture. From the wall, you can see the water crashing into the rocks, and it looks crystal clear, looks absolutely beautiful. You also get a nice view of some people surfing at the beach. I also had a gift shop here if you wanted to get a souvenir or get some ice cream. My mom is a sucker for lighthouses, so she visited this place a few different times. This random building here looks pretty cool from the outside, but on the inside, it just feels like a small little maze. There is another castle nearby, but that was our favorite. The second boat tour we did a little bit more weaving in and out of caves. This area was more popular for the kayak tours as well. This is the week we had Marissa and Clay, so we were on a time crunch trying to make sure that they got to see the city as well. Both of the boat tours we took were about 40 minutes to an hour one way and then 40 minutes to an hour back. The boat on the second trip was quite a bit smaller, so you can maneuver in and out of the caves. If I ever visit Portugal again, I would do the kayaking tour and make a day out of it. On the way back, Marissa said, if you've seen one cliff, you've seen them all. The next day, we drove back to Spain and did a day trip with Marissa and Clay. This was going to be at the back end of the trip for Marissa and Clay, so it's coming close to the overlap time we'll have with Holly and Jonathan. We picked Holly and Jonathan up at the airport at Lisbon, went out to eat, and then went to the Airbnb. In Portugal, it was a lot cheaper to rent a manual car than it would be an automatic, so we rented 2 manuals for the time we had overlap. We did have 2 parking spots for the Airbnb, but we had to share this small little garage. If you do have any questions, drop those in the comments below, and I'll try to answer those to the best of my ability. Also, be sure to drop a like on this video, it really does help the channel grow. One of the things we gotta do as a full family is take this tour of Lisbon on a boat. You get to go under the bridge, see some cool landmarks, and we saw some dolphins as well. We did a sunset tour, so we got to see some of the city in the day and some of the city in the night. On this boat ride, half the family had a few drinks and half the family didn't. If you could guess just by the dancing who had some alcohol in their system. If you guessed James, you would be wrong. This is a completely sober dance. The same goes for me, Marissa, Mom, and Clay with this absolute banger of a move. We definitely all danced like we're white, but we had a really good time on the boat. It's always a good time when you have the full family together. They were playing some banger hits, and that Sprite was hitting different. Would definitely recommend doing a booze cruise, even if you're not going to enjoy some booze. Got a good night's sleep at the Airbnb, and the next day we did a ton of walking. I think the coolest thing that we got to do as a full group was visit Sintra. There's a ton of walking trails, castles, gardens that you could check out. I thought it was pretty cool that you could walk up in these towers and take a look over the city. I thought it was cool seeing the spiral staircase in this little watchtower. This is definitely a tourism hotspot, so there's a lot of people walking around. For this spot in Sintra, there was really only a line in one spot, and the line was totally justified. The wait was a little bit long, but of course there's going to be a little bit of a bottleneck with people taking pictures and videos when they see this. In Sintra, there's 4 or 5 different stops and places you can go, but I highly recommend knocking this one off first. You actually have to have a permit to be in this area, so you would have to hire a driver to take you to different spots, which I would definitely recommend because it's a ton of walking if you don't. You get to start at the top and walk all the way down the spiral, leave through a little tunnel, and you could find tunnels and passageways all through this area, which is really cool to check out. Most of Portugal seemed pretty dry, like there's not too much rain, but this was a pretty luscious area. Just like the Arcadian, the lion head stonework here is just iconic. We were able to all squeeze into one van to go to all these different stops. Even with him taking us to different locations, you still had a ton of walking that you had to do. The other long line that we had to stand through was to go to this castle here. You gotta go in a single file line all the way through the castle, seeing inside and out. Once you got to the end of the tour, they gave you a little bit more free reign where you could just walk around. With this being a tourist hotspot, there was a place to get food, and they also had a shop where you could get souvenirs. When we first got to the castle, it was pretty cloudy, and you really couldn't see too much of the view. However, the clouds eventually did go away, so I got a much better shot of the castle. The day in Sintra was the last day as a full family. The next day we dropped Marissa and Clay off at the airport, and then started the week with Jonathan and Holly. Back at the southern part of Portugal, there's so many restaurants with beautiful ocean views. When we were looking to go to a restaurant, they would typically have their menu outside, so you could look it over, make sure there's going to be something you like before you go in. One of the places we went the most was a beach just a few minutes away from where we stayed. They had walking trails, they had overlooks, there was a spot where you could even get a massage at the beach. Now that we had Holly and Jonathan, it was time to go visit Spain one last time. We got to walk around the city, do some shopping, went to a park, went to a show as well. It wasn't quite my cup of tea, but it was pretty interesting to watch. It didn't have any signs or anything saying you couldn't film, which was a little surprising, so I was able to get a few shots. Here we have World Traveler Misty Hollenball, sponsored by Coca-Cola. On Holly and Jonathan's last full day with us, we found this cool cave, which led to a photo shoot for my sisters. I was having a good time as well. I love getting footage of the ocean, and this was just a really cool spot. We were actually at this exact same beach 1 or 2 times before and didn't know this cave existed. We saw some people swimming and disappear into the cliffside, and they came out like 20 minutes later, so we decided to check it out. The last few days was just me, Mom, and James, so we tried to do quite a bit of hiking. One of the beaches we hiked to had a little side path going to the top of the cliffs with a beautiful view. There was a few ruins at the top as well, but not really much there. Some of the cooler hikes led to secluded beaches. However, with the secluded beaches, you're more likely to run into nudists. I don't think any of these were actually listed as a nude beach, but we still give my mom a hard time for taking her family to one. Looking at the ground here, you can see it's pretty dry. This is what most of Portugal actually looked like in the shrubbery. Southern Portugal doesn't get much rain, so it's sunshine most of the year. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it.